I'm working on a project that needs a minus 12 volt power supply. So I thought I'd upgrade my existing power supply to provide that. Now, if you're an astute observer, you might recognize the enclosure that my power supply is currently housed in, because it bears striking resemblance to an Apple II Disk 2 floppy drive. Um, I don't know, I can't remember if the sacrificial lamb from whence my power supply came was a working Apple II Disk 2 or not. Let's just pretend it was. I think it actually was a bad drive. I had a bunch of them at one point, and they came from somewhere. But from the underside, you can see that an Apple II disk enclosure is also the exact same size as an ATX or AT power supply. So what I did was I cut the housing up, and I used the back of the housing as the front of my power supply, and this cover here got in the way of the power supply, so I had to cut that back, so it's cut a little crooked there. There's a screw added for the ground connection, and I shoved the power supply in there. So let's open it up. So there's nothing terribly exciting in here. My front panel has just got a few binding posts on it and some wires attached to it. And this is an AT power supply, not an ATX power supply. So that's back from the days before power supplies had a soft power on signal. And the only way to turn this thing on or off was with a switch. It was also back in the days when power supplies had pass-through IEC connectors on the back, which I'm sure will come in handy one day. As part of my conversion process, I just left all the wires rolled up and stuffed inside, because I figured one day I might want to pick off some more of the voltages that are available inside here. This floppy drive enclosure actually works quite well as a power supply. It's got all the vents here that let this power supply breathe. It has front to back ventilation, so that works just fine. So I'm going to grab the... I might just fire up the Googler. It's one of these three wires here will be the one I seek, so I'm going to figure out which one's which. I forgot one other thing I wanted to fix in this power supply, and that's the fan. The one that's in here doesn't like cold temperatures, and I think it's just a sleeve bearing in the fan, so when it gets cold, it starts to make the sound that fans make when they're dying. So I picked up a 2-ball bearings fan, maybe. I don't think it's even that terrible, but it can't be worse than what I have in here. Yeah, this is a Primax PowerCore 230 watt power supply, 5 volts at 23 amps, 12 volts 8.5 amps, minus 5.5 an amp, minus 12.5 an amp. And that's all I need anyway. I wonder where it was made. I don't know. So it has been a while since this has been on. I'm going to... Are these good? Well, the caps don't seem too buggered. This is impressive. The old fan has a 2-wire connection. The new fan has a tachometer output with a 3-wire connection. I was hoping to just plug it into the same connector and leave some stuff hanging over, but there's a thing there and everything's backwards. So what I'm going to have to do is disassemble this connector and reassemble this connector body onto these terminals and cut off the yellow wire. For the curious, the way to disassemble these is to, if you look on this side of the connector, you can see the silver of the female terminals inside, and there's a little barb on it. If you just press on the barb with a wee screwdriver and do it with 2 hands, press on the barb, pull the little bugger out. Oh, no, I've jammed it good. Press on the bar, pull it out. Press on the bar, pull it out. One down. I can look like I know what I'm doing now. Press and pull. Press and pull. I'm assuming that I didn't pay attention. Which is which? Check the video. After reviewing the footage twice, I've confirmed that the red goes here, so I can just push that in, and it snaps in place. And I can do the same with the black. And just push it in. Alright, so that's that. And then the yellow wire, I think what I'll do with the yellow wire is find the tools I'm now missing. Lift this, and there's the yellow wire, and I think if I just get in there with this and say, no attack for you. There. Alright, we've got the new fan put in there with some new screws. I may have left this power supply out in the rain at one point, maybe. So my old screws were a little rusty. So I'm going to see if it works. Oh, that's much better. It's actually spinning and moving air. It's got a really weird. Good. So at some point in the past, I felt that I might need all the ground wires connected because I'd be pulling all 52 amps of this power supply. Probably doesn't deliver. So to drill additional holes in this front panel, I'm going to need to remove the wires from the existing screw terminals because I want to do it in my drill press, or at least in a semi-organized fashion. And the work kind of looks like crap anyway. So I'm going to try heat these things up, put some fresh solder on them. So I've installed the distinctly cheaper binding posts on here, which will give me my negative voltage terminals. And I'll be duplicating the ground, but inside the power supply they're all the same. It's a common ground rail for everything. So the next thing I'm going to do, I think, is I think I'm going to pare down some of this mess. I connected all 4, 5, 12 volt leads. I think that was overkill. So I'm going to take a look at what goes where on the board here, and probably trim them right back to the board here. Alright, so I changed my mind. I was going to just trim the wires off, flush with the board. Didn't like the way it looked, and I couldn't get to some of these tricky 5 volt ones. So I pulled this board out and desoldered all the offending wires, and then just bridged over the holes with some solder because it was like Swiss cheese with all these holes in there. So I've isolated it down to the power on signal, which I'd planned on trying to connect to an LED, but I put this back together. So that'll have to happen next time. This is the -5 and -12, +12, ground, and +5. So I'll put the board back in, the frame, and get the whole thing put back together and hook those up. Okay, so I've got this thing all wired up, nice and neat now that I've only got a single wire on each terminal. And I noticed that the -12 volt rail is not very close to -12 at all. 5 volts, not too bad. +5 is not too bad. +12, could be better. So I'm gonna take a peek inside and see if there's any kind of adjustment for those values. The handy thing about these supplies is that because everything's on a common ground, you can mix and match your voltages. So there's 22 volts, or what's that one? 16 volts. 6. What's that? That's from. Oh, it's because my 12 volt rails are all goofy. I go between the two 5s and get myself a 10-volt rail. So it's kind of handy. It ends up being quite universal, even though it's fairly low current on those other 2 rails, but what I'm doing, it's fine. So I'm going to take the signal apart and take a peek inside and see if there's any obvious adjustments. Just want to point this out. There's a cloud of destruction on the inside of this case, and that's not from this power supply. Because that corresponds with right about there on the power supply, and there's nothing going on there. So that would have been from whatever was wrong with that floppy drive. So vintage Apple fanboys, rest assured, I didn't murder a working floppy drive. So I dug around inside here. There's only one adjustment on this entire power supply, and it alters all of the voltages. So I can get this to minus 12 volts, but in doing so, the 5-volt rail ends up around 6 volts, and the minus 5, minus 6. So I put it back where it was before, which was 5.16-ish volts, although the meter's now reading 5.21. Maybe I'll sneak this back in here. You hear the fan. Alright, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay, so that's all done. I got myself 2 more voltages on my power supply here. New fan's a bit louder, but it'll definitely work better, especially in the cold, because I sometimes run this power supply when it's minus 10 or something out, and it doesn't ever sound happy. And also gave it a health check, and everything looks pretty good inside. I'm quite happy with it. At minus, it's down. It's up to minus 11. Why are you doing this to me? There we go. I forgot the history of this power supply. I think I built this. I can't remember. Probably 18 years ago now. And it's served me quite well. I use this. This is my electrolytic de-rusting power supply. All my electronics projects end up getting run off of this thing, and it just keeps working. So I'm happy with it. It's not by any means sophisticated, but it continues to work. It has good short circuit protection. I've tested that out numerous times, and well, it works. Oh, I just want to talk about safety. It seems even I'm not immune to the comments where people say, "Oh, you should never do that thing, you might die." And this isn't an advice channel. If you're looking for advice, this is definitely the wrong place. Don't work on these things live, ever, unless you're stupid. Unless you want to demonstrate to people that you're stupid, and you want them to describe you as an idiot in your eulogy, which I'm expecting anyway. But I've been fiddling with this kind of stuff for a long time. I know the lay of the land. I'm not an idiot. Don't assume that I am. And if you make any comments, I'll just delete them. So, yeah, there's that. Thanks for watching.